Welcome back everybody. Today we are shooting with the Cactus V6ii triggers again, this time with the Elinchrom ELB400. If you haven't seen the previous video of the setup of the Cactus V6iis with the Fuji XT2, make sure you check out the video in the link up there, and then you'll get a good idea of how to set it all up before you actually get out and start shooting. So we've picked a little industrial location not too far from the studio to shoot with today. Hopefully we're going to get a bit of bright sunlight that we can shoot some really high speed sync and some shallow depth of field type stuff. Sass Kia is our lovely model today. Hello Sass Kia.
Hello.
So we're going to do some a couple of different shots in different locations and just see what we can do with this combination of the Fuji XT2 Cactus V6 Mark II triggers and the Elinchrom ELB400. All right, let's get started. Okay, we found our first spot. I'm just going to position Sass Kia here along the row of these old metal, whatever they are, containers, and shoot some really shallow depth of field so we've got some nice blur going into the background and also into the foreground, and pick up some of this texture where it is going to be sharp. What I'll do first is just do an ambient exposure reading and take a shot just to establish my ambient value, and then we can work out what flash power we need to compensate. So I'll underexpose the ambient and then add flash in on Sass Kia to lighten her up, and the rest of the scene will be a bit darker than her. Okay, so I've got my ambient shot worked out. 200 ISO, 1/2000th of a second at f2.8. So that gives us some really shallow depth of field on the 56mm 1.2. I'll just turn the flash on now and we'll see what sort of flash power we need to light Sass Kia up nicely. So that's very overexposed at 5.0 power on the ELB400, so I'll drop that back to 2.5 and that'll give us a starting point. That's looking much nicer. Sass Kia, I might just get you to turn you around a little bit more. Yeah, probably put your back into that wall there so the flash is hitting your face a bit more evenly. That's great. Yeah, that's looking really lovely. Got some really nice texture happening, and the color is really nice as well with that dress. Just change my angle slightly. Sass, I'll just get you to turn around a little bit more towards me. Drop that arm down as well. Maybe just, yeah, cross your arms across. That's it. Yeah, great. Nice. That's looking really good. Might do just a few more kind of with arm positions, similar to that.
Yep.
just going to open up to f1.4 now, just so we can get even shallower depth of field, get an extra blur on that background. So I'm going to have to compensate on the flash, because if I go from 2.8 down to 1.4, keeping the same flash exposure, the flash is going to be well overexposed. Of course, for my ambient, I'm going to have to go from 1/2000th of a second up to 8,000th of a second if I go from 2.8 to 1.4. So I'm going to do that to start with, and then figure out what flash power we're going to need. So I'll keep the flash power the same for this first shot, and then just adjust it from there. Surprise, surprise, it's good. So due to the way high-speed sync works, it's not actually really predictable what exposure you're going to get when you're changing up in shutter speed with your flash. So I've just changed it from 2,000th of a second to 1/8,000th of a second. Haven't adjusted the flash. Normally you get a much more overexposed image going from f2.8 to 1.4, but because we've compensated by going to higher shutter speed with high-speed sync, the exposure now has actually worked out pretty much the same. So because that exposure has stayed pretty much the same, we're just going to roll with that same flash setting of f2.5 and just do a few more shots at f1.4 and just see what sort of compositions we can come up with. Well, we might just move this way just a little bit, just to get a bit more depth in our background. Move the flash forward as well. So keeping the flash distance about the same, we shouldn't have to change our exposure at all. So I should just mention the softbox that I'm using at the moment is just a little 56mm Portalight softbox from Elinchrom. I usually try and keep the softboxes fairly small in location because wind is a definite factor you have to consider. The bigger the softbox or umbrella you're using, the more chance of the wind catching it and it just sort of blowing over and destroying your flash. So it's not the softest light available. As I spin it around, you'll see it's only got the front diffusing panel. There's no interior. There's no interior baffle. So you have to be fairly careful about positioning. I have noticed on the back of the camera that we are getting a couple of little hot spots on Sass Kia. It's a very warm day here today in Brisbane, so we're going to be sweating a little bit. So I'm going to have to deal with that in post-production. So I'm just going to drop back to 1/4000th of a second and go to f2, just to get a touch more depth of field just on Sass Kia. The background's still going to be nicely blurred. So we've been working in the shade here because we've had a big cloud up in front of the sun. Hopefully that cloud's going to disappear in a second and we're going to get a bit of sunlight, because what I want to do is work with some shadows. But until then, let's just pick another little spot in the shade and do some more shallow depth of field stuff. So I've switched to the 16mm now, going for a much wider shot, still keeping the same exposure settings. So currently 200 ISO, 1/4000th of a second at f2. And keeping the power of the flash the same. It's still roughly the same distance away from Sass Kia as it was before. With the composition, I've got Sass Kia basically in the center, and she's framed by her surroundings here. Fly.
It's gonna be a great blooper.
Yeah, it'll be good bloopers. Yeah. So let's just do our first test shot and squeaky brakes. Helicopter. So let's do our first shot and just see how that looks. Because it is full length, we might just get you to play with the dress a little bit, show a little bit of leg. Yep, holding it out. Yeah, that's really nice. Keeping your face up towards the light. Ooh, that's it, perfect. Okay, so that's looking really, really good. She is right dead in the center of the frame. And the only thing that really bothers me is that dark panel where it meets the light panel is going right up the center from her head. So I might just get Sass Kia to move a little bit off to one side. That's good. And I'll just shift the flash a little bit as well because she's moved across. Yeah, just get you to do a bit more of a wider stance so your feet are a little bit further apart. So yeah, keeping one foot right out. That's good. Yeah, that's good. Just making sure I can see your other foot as well. Yep, that's great. Keep your hand out like that, yep, and bring your face around this way a little bit more and chin up a touch. That's great, perfect. Yeah, that looks pretty cool.
Nice.
Coming out of your head.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, so without changing anything, I'm just going to come in for a slightly tighter composition. So I'm going to crop around Sass Kia's waist. We should still get a reasonable amount of that background. So this is just to get a tighter crop, just to vary the compositions that we get throughout the day. So this lighting setup is fairly flat lighting. We're lighting directly onto Sass Kia. So I'm now just going to move the flash off to the side so we can get a bit more modeling on Sass Kia's face and create a bit more drama with the lighting. Hashtag drama. I knew you were thinking that. So come forward a little bit. Yeah, that exposure looks good. Just looking kind of more in a profile, that's it. I'm just going to try that as a full length. So I like that last composition as a vertical, which includes a bit of the sky and the clouds above, but it's a little bit wide with the 16. Sass Kia looks a little bit too distorted. So I'm going to switch over to the 23mm, which is a 35mm equivalent in full frame terms. That's going to give us a much more natural perspective. All right, let's try that same shot again. So really playing with the skirt. That's it. Nice. Okay, well, it doesn't look like we're going to get our sunshine. The clouds really have come right over now, and the sun is starting to get lower in the sky as well. So we'll see if we can find one more little spot to shoot, and then we'll call it a day. Okay, so we've got our last setup. We're starting to lose a bit of light now because those clouds really have come over quite heavy, and the sun is getting lower in the horizon. So I've had to just open back up to 1/2000th of a second from 4,000th of a second. Still shooting at f2, and I've dropped my flash power back down to 3.0. So with this composition, I've got Sass Kia placed on the very far right hand side of the frame, and that leaves the background there open on the left hand side. This would be a great sort of horizontal composition if you needed to place text. I'll probably use this shot for the title of this video. So with keeping that composition in mind, it's a really good idea to shoot some images which have got a lot of negative space so that you can place text over. Sass, can you just turn your body towards me a little bit now? That's it. Yeah, keep your right hand up and your other arm just across. Yeah, actually that's perfect. And then just looking back towards me. That's great. I'm just going to move the flash around a little bit so we can get a little bit more light on Sass Kia's left eye. Getting a bit too shadowy there. Now getting a bit more light in the foreground on this panel here, so just going to angle the head around a little bit further. Feather that light off there a little bit. That looks much better. Yeah, perfect, Sass, that's great. Very cool.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's really different.
Right, I think that's going to do us for this afternoon. There's a storm on its way, so it's getting pretty dark at the moment. So it's best we wrap it up and get inside before that hits us. Thanks again for joining us today. Hope you learnt something. We've got some great images out of this combination of the Fuji XT2 Cactus V6iis and the Elinchrom ELB400. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see some more. And until we see you in the next video, ciao for now.
Bye.